Responsive. Here we go.
All right, now let's get global. Come on, Gore.
All right, we'll get global. Well, for one thing, I'd like to know if anybody's heard anything lately on the 3 young men who went down to Mississippi, whose charred car was found tonight, or rather this afternoon. Has anybody found them?
Well, the latest newscast, just before we went on the air, said that they had discovered the burned car of the 3 boys, but they had no trace of the boys whatsoever.
I think it's a very tragic thing that what's been staring us in the face hasn't moved us until it hit us in the face. My own feeling has been for a long, long time, the FBI had really been serious about this. They would have had their federal marshals, they would have had the FBI people from Washington down there, and a lot of these things that take place that we read about today just wouldn't take place because the deterrent effect of federal marshals or FBI on the spot would probably preclude a lot of this violence. I think it's a shameful thing that these lads should have come across if they did foul play in order to wake the country up to what has to be done.
Do you feel that J. Edgar Hoover, many people have criticized him, has been generally dragging his feet when it comes to civil liberties, particularly in the area of colored people in the South?
When it comes to civil rights?
Yes.
Everything I've heard about J. Edgar Hoover indicates that his heart's just not in the civil rights struggle. Yes. He's never made an important statement on it. Members of the Civil Rights Commission, Federal Civil Rights Commission, people who've worked in the Justice Department have all said to me that this man's heart is just not in civil rights.
I've had occasion recently to be in various assemblies where Negro leaders spoke up, and they are disheartened and frustrated and angry that the FBI can solve almost any crime from sabotage to a murder of a white man or a kidnapper or something. But they can never seem to find the people who bombed the church in Birmingham. They can't find the people who murdered Medgar. Well, they did find that man.
They did find a man, but they couldn't get a conviction. Because the FBI it's not up to the FBI to get a conviction.
No,
that's up to the jury.
Investigate and apprehend.
You can't blame Mr. Hoover or the FBI for not being able to get a jury in that state which will convict a white man.
The sad thing is that the FBI in Mississippi is all Southern white. And naturally, they're very closely tied in with the local authorities, which for most crimes would be a very understandable thing. But for civil rights, that's no good.
Are you saying that when we read in the paper that the FBI from its Memphis bureau sent investigators down to look into it, that these are Southerners, even though FBI agents,
almost in all cases,
whose heart isn't in the job?
And they're Southerners first, which is the problem, as J. Edgar Hoover is himself. And I was very heartened by Life magazine, most unusually, a recent editorial, must J. Edgar Hoover go on forever? He is past retirement age, and it might be a very useful thing if we gave Lyndon Johnson a vote of confidence out here in the dark. It's all right to let him go, that you're not automatically a communist if you don't want J. Edgar Hoover any longer in that job. He's done a marvelous work in the past, and he's a great public servant, but get somebody new, and somebody who is committed to this
Gore, what do you think was Lyndon Johnson's motive for asking him to stay on past retirement age? Was that a political move?
Entirely political. The same thing happened under the Kennedys. The same thing happened under Roosevelt, Eisenhower, Truman. This man has been there all along. He is so entrenched with Congress. I mean, to say a word against J. Edgar Hoover is worth your life, because you've got to deal with congressional committees. He has worked this publicity machine, and for anybody who's interested in going into a little detail on him, Fred Clark in The Nation did quite an interesting study of him, which is now coming out as a book. It is the real cult of personality stuff. And there was a time when he was an early G man, and he was a noble and great figure.
That's the sad thing. He was a great man. It's like Schweitzer, these great men who outlived the world in which they lived, and then they can't quite keep up with it. And it's too bad that we should turn against.
Can I ask you whether you think that the probable foul play with these 3 young men in Philadelphia, Mississippi, presages more violence and bloodshed for the thousands of college students who plan to head into Mississippi and Georgia and Alabama this summer to work for voter registration among the Negroes? Is this the beginning of an awful lot of blood?
My guess is that Governor Johnson wants to keep the young folk out. On the other hand, he wants to keep the feds out, too. And so he has to tread a rather fine line between harassment and violence, which might bring in federal marshals. So my hope is that a tragedy such as this one is going to preclude further violence.
There are people, I guess, just...
I don't know,
Hello?
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 Yes?
Hello?
Yeah, hello, Mr. Vidal?
Yes, sir.
I was just wondering what your thoughts were on the question of whether or not the recent large number of white college students who are going down south might indicate that possibly a number of Negroes are more apathetic about the rights than the whites.
That's a good point. To me, it's a marvelous thing that anybody is willing to commit himself for anybody else's rights. I think it just has more power that it comes from white students who have nothing to...
Liberals are the middle of the road, the ultra-conservative are to the right, and the what I call the Democrats, certain segment of Democrats, because I think I'm speaking to a pro-democratic group at the moment.
How did you guess that?
From the last conversation regarding Barry Goldwater.
Well, for the record, I'm an independent, sir. I voted on both sides of the fence.
For the record, I'm an independent and voted for Rockefeller for governor and a Republican for mayor, and I don't know what you feel. I want to ask you why these labels matter to you, conservative, ultra-conservative.
Well, if he wants a definition now...
Well, the reason why I'm asking is that you are terming Barry Goldwater as a ultra-conservative or to the far right.
Yes.
Isn't he the only person who, of the Republicans and the Democrats, for that matter, who has made a concrete statement on foreign policy? He's the only Republican who has fought hard in the primaries and shown that he is able to take the states by a majority,
well,
which is what President Kennedy did in 1960.
There is no doubt about Barry Goldwater being pretty definite, depending on which day you hear him. I mean, on Monday, he's against Social Security. On Tuesday, he's in favor of it. But seriously, in principle, I think you've made a very good and interesting point that Goldwater, who is a man of very little intellect, shall we say, nevertheless, by going around and saying a lot of things which people ordinarily don't say in politics, is stirring up a lot of very interesting things. Many people are frightened to have it stirred up. I'm not so sure that I'm not glad that he might be the nominee, that he will talk out for, say, white suburbia, and he'll be perfectly open about it. It may well be that we're getting away from this famous consensus, which I think is the most dreadful.
I think it would be horrible if he's the nominee, because I think he would polarize the country into extreme right, and then the other party would be the liberal.
You'd have Lyndon Johnson solidly in the middle of the road where the votes are, and old Barry would be out there on the prairie.
It seems to me every 4 years it's good for the country to have a good airing of issues, and I think Johnson would have a hard time discussing issues with Goldwater. That's my feeling.
Well, let's get back then to the question of Henry Cabot Lodge coming back from Vietnam. Doesn't that look like the vultures feasting on the body killed by the lion?
Who is the body, sir?
Well, I mean, Barry Goldwater went out and fought the battles in the primary.
Well, so did Rockefeller.
Rockefeller lost. He threw his support behind Bill Scranton, who came in the last moment. And Henry Cabot Lodge is hoping to come over now and keep the issue open. I don't think it is to help Bill Scranton, but to keep it open for himself.
Well, that may be true, but what does it prove? Just because Barry Goldwater worked hard, well, he wants to be president. I don't think we should give any A's for effort. After all, Keith Fuller went out and won a lot of primaries, and then Adlai Stevenson got the nomination. Life can be cruel, that's all.
You can't win them all.
You can't win them all.
That's the other cliche, I think.
I think, yes, we will start beating them here.
Life can be cruel and politics can be terrifying.
And television shows can have commercials, David.
Yes, it's time again. You will excuse us.
All right, thank you very much.
We want to pay our tribute to American free enterprise.
Thank you.